This is a MapleSoft digital education podcast.
Hello, my name is Stephen Furino. I am the Assistant Dean for Online Studies in the Faculty of Mathematics at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. I am also a Chief Collaborator with MapleSoft on the creation of Mobius, which is a development and deployment platform for digital STEM assets. And with me today is Maydison Ginting of Universitas Prasetiya Mulya in Jakarta, Indonesia.
That's correct.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So as a faculty member and as a chair of a school, you have lots of choices about how you use your time and what you request of the faculty who work for you. So why did you choose to work in e-learning and online courses?
Well, first of all, before I went back to Indonesia, I was in the United States. I did my graduate degree there, and then I had the experience to teach class, and then we used like some kind of online learning. And then when I went back home, online learning is not really like something like common that everybody use it. So I really want, and then also the university also pushed to go to the online learning, because from the experience also, the students seems like really like and then enjoy the online learning, and then they do their work on their own, and then at the end also the bottom line, it improved the result, it improved their grade.
So tell me why you think that students enjoy the online learning, because often I hear faculty colleagues say that the students are going to enjoy it less. They want the students to be in class and want to have that social interaction, but you're saying even in your experience in the United States, lots of students really enjoyed the digital parts of their coursework.
Yeah, well, at the beginning, usually they complain about it, but once they get used to it, they kind of like it, because they said like they can redo it on their own, they can review it, and then they can access it on their own also.
At their own time?
Yeah, at their own time.
2 o'clock in the morning?
2 o'clock in the morning with their pajamas or something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to think about what they're wearing, where they are. What they're doing,
And then also some features also that when they do the problems, like for example, for one problem, it can give you like a step-by-step how to solve it, and then they just redo it and then do like another problems. So in a sense, they kind of like it after a while, and then they don't want to go back to like the old-fashioned way.
So you moved back to Indonesia.
That's right.
And there's not a lot of e-learning taking place in Indonesia right now, but like Canada, geography makes some things difficult in Indonesia. An archipelago makes it hard to
That's correct.
get around. I have been in Jakarta. The traffic in Jakarta, no offense, is truly horrific. So just to go a short distance in Jakarta can take a long time. Do you think there's much interest in e-learning in Indonesia?
Well, I can see that a lot of people will be interested, and the university also, I believe, it will adopt the online learning. See, because also if you when you say like the geography of Indonesia, the archipelago, the education system is not like have like the same
it's not uniform across the country?
Yeah, it's not uniform, right? So from people from Java and then from outside Java, the quality is kind of there's a big gap. So I think with the online learning, we'll create like a bridge, you know, to level everything, and then people from who doesn't have the access to the education, and if they have access to the internet, so they can catch up also, so they can study also on their own.
So because it's an archipelago, a wired internet is difficult.
Yeah.
Is it the case that everyone has a smartphone and a data plan? And because if so, that means that Indonesia can leapfrog an entire generation of telecommunications networking.
Yeah. See, because like you said also, almost everybody seems to have a smartphone, so they can access the online learning. So it will like speed up the process. Instead of go to the remote area, send the teachers there with all the books and logistical stuff. It's kind of difficult and expensive also. So with the online learning can like speed up the whole thing.
Mathematician, I love mathematics, but there aren't always lots of teachers interested in mathematics in every location. So how is the interest in teaching mathematics in Indonesia, say from grade 6 to grade 12?
Well, I agree with you that to have a good education in math, we have a good, great teacher also. So with this online learning also, we can use these tools to improve the teacher skills before they teach the students. So I think with this one also, we can have like, improve the skills of the teacher.
So we can teach the teacher, and
yeah,
everybody gets better in the process.
That's right.
So Prasetiya Mulya
That's correct.
is a business school and a STEM school,
Yeah,
with the STEM program getting underway.
that's right.
Thoughts on how you will be using digital assets as the new program begins?
Yeah, because Prasetiya Mulya is a very well-known business school in Indonesia, and then start this year in September 2007, we will have the first enrollment for like a new school, which call it like applied school of applied STEM, and then we plan to implement the online learning, use the technology. See, because we see also like a young generation in Indonesia, they are like digitally connected, and then they have their phone, their gadget, everything. So if we can like interact them with the education, with their habit using the technology, I think it will induce their curiosity for learning, especially in the STEM area.
So the young folks, by young I'll say 15 to 25,
right.
they're digitally connected, and
That's
they are comfortable with digital assets. How about your colleagues, or those of us who are, say, 40 years older than the students? Will you have any difficulty finding people to build the digital assets?
Well, luckily, at Prasetiya Mulya, the average age of faculty members is probably like between 30 to 40.
Okay.
So we are kind of into technology also.
So as you roll out this new technology opportunity for your students, what are the things that you're thinking of as most important in e-learning?
Most important of e-learning.
Right. So is it a technology platform? Is it thinking about assessment differently?
The technology platform, the capability that the online learning can deliver, especially in a STEM area like math, physics, and chemistry, because usually in the old system, it's kind of very static, so you don't have really a lot of flexibility to what you wanna do in online learning. Because what I imagine in my mind, I wanna transform everything that I do in class to online.
But let me ask you more about that. So I'm a very traditional teacher in a classroom, so I still use a blackboard.
Yeah.
And so I actually haven't made much gain over Archimedes in Alexandria 2,300 years ago. He wrote in sand horizontally, I now write in chalk vertically. Not much of a technology difference for 2,300 years.
Yeah.
How do you see, and I think some people think of e-learning as taking what I wrote on the blackboard
That's
and
right.
creating a PDF online.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is you want to do something more than that.
That's right.
What do you want to do?
Well, for example, have like a capabilities like just record my teaching, or probably have a live stream. Say like I set up the time with the students, and then do a live stream teaching. So kind of even though we are not in the same room, but we can still like manage to have like a kind of like regular classroom.
Right. So that would be a regular. What that helps with is people at a distance.
That's right.
I'm not sure that it's actually a different pedagogy than what I did in my classroom.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of online as a way to reach a larger audience or a different audience, or do you actually want to change the way you teach?
I think
Or
probably
both?
Both. Yeah, because we want to reach a lot of audience, and then also reach people like from like remote part of Indonesia, and then also we want to have like the good thing with digital technology, so we can put it there so they can like access it many times as they want.
Okay, so let's dream about Indonesia. So
right.
suppose I have a magic wand, I have a special magic wand, I have a magic wand that will grant you some wishes. How would you change, how would Prasetiya Mulya want to change education in Indonesia? And how would you do that online?
Well, want to change, that's a good question.
We have time, so you can think about an answer.
Well, first of all, right, this is the vision of the leadership at the Prasetiya Mulya, that we wanna reach into the STEM area, because I believe, my personal opinion also, because the STEM education in Indonesia is a little bit behind compared to the surrounding country, the neighboring country. So with this technology, online learning with the latest technology, I believe it will like trigger the enthusiasm in a STEM area, especially in math.
And is there much demand for students with STEM qualifications?
Oh yeah, yeah. See, the problem also, like probably like in Canada, majority of students, when they heard math, they
run away.
We have a magic word in Indonesia, like kind of a scary word, like mafia. Mafia is an abbreviation of Matematika, Fisika, and Kimia, which is math, physics, and chemistry. And then that's just like, no, that's not for me.
So what sort of industries would employ people with mathematics, physics, and chemistry in Indonesia right now?
A lot of them, for example, like in the insurance industries, because right now in Indonesia we really need like professional actuaries, engineers, and then like computer scientists. So actually the possibility is large. Yeah.
So you talked earlier about reaching audiences. Do you have specific audiences in mind? Is it the intent to expand in Java or expand over all of Indonesia, remote areas? Do you have a specific interest in a new or larger audience?
Oh yeah, because if you look at the demography in Indonesia, more than 50% of Indonesian population is below 30 years old. So we have a very young generation demography. So, and then also with the competitiveness now, that we have to, like Indonesia have to produce like a very qualified like human resources. So with this technology can reach a lot of young generation right now, even in the remote area. So they don't have to go to Jakarta, to main island Java. So they can do it in their own town, and then we just maintain it through the online. So before the online, it seems like impossible to do it. See, now it's become possible.
And so if I'm a villager somewhere near Manado,
yes, right, or the eastern part of Indonesia,
how likely is it that I'm going to actually be interested in STEM, or will I just say school, avoid school? But so do you think there's a real interest in STEM?
Yeah. See, actually, I believe a lot of Indonesian, especially from outside Java remote area, they have a hunger for education, but the problem, they just don't have the opportunity of have access to it. Part of it because of probably like, they have to go to Java, and then the cost is too expensive, and then also like to provide qualified teachers. So, but with online, it can reach a lot of people.
It can solve lots of those problems at the same time.
That's right.
So suppose I'm opposed to online learning. How would you convince me that I should spend the time and money to adopt e-learning in Indonesia?
Well, probably the first thing I'm gonna do, I will probably show the data, the result from other countries who already implement the online learning, like in the US or in Canada, or probably at University of Waterloo, because it can give like good example, because the data cannot lie, right? So you see like a before and after. So I believe, because when you try to implement new stuff, you will see a lot of people object to it. But at one point, you just have to start it to begin.
You have to begin.
Yeah.
And so you have begun. So thinking of beginnings, has the government supported online education in Indonesia? And what is their plan? And does Prasetiya Mulya figure into their plans, or are they operating independently? What's the government's take on online learning in Indonesia?
I believe the government will support it. Probably also right now, a lot of us, we are talking about like online learning, but we don't really know what kind of tools that appropriate. So if we just at Prasetiya Mulya, if we can start with a new technology, for example with Mobius, and then see the benefit of it, and then show to a lot of people and other university, and then to the government also, I believe the government will support.
So you think incremental change is the way this will work?
Yeah.
So we start with a relatively small number of students, a few hundred.
That's right.
We show that it works. We work out the problems with the technology. Show the data to interested parties, the foundation that runs the university, the government, other faculty colleagues, and then we say, okay, how could we do this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can see also like other like reputable universities like in the US or Canada or even in a neighboring country in Singapore or Malaysia. I believe they already implement online learning using the technology.
So you've talked about evidence, and there's certainly been lots of conversations in North America about analytics, educational analytics. What are the kinds of questions that you would like to ask and answer of data that we might collect from e-learning environments?
To create a big data, or
right? So we can track with e-learning. We can track much more closely what students do than we can with students who are in the classroom and do their assignments at home. What sort of data would you track? What sort of questions would you ask of the data to provide evidence to people who would doubt the efficiency, the efficacy of online learning?
Probably one of the first question probably they will ask, how much is gonna cost?
So you're thinking that there's a real possibility that e-learning in Indonesia could lower the costs of...
If it can lower the cost, probably, because that's the idea, right? Because we try to reduce the cost of education back home. Because the aim is to reach like the underprivileged, like people from the remote area, because they have like very limited in resources, in the financial. So
I don't have to spend the same amount of money building schools, training teachers, sending teachers.
That's right.
And I can do this faster because you can take those assets built once and use them across the entire country.
That's right. Yeah, if you think like, if you are familiar, just like you said, in Manado, Sulawesi, and then next to it like bunch of island in Maluku, or Papua, it's very difficult to reach to them, right? In the remote area, something like that, and then we have to send people. But now we just use online learning, so we can reach them at the same time.
So how would you measure that Indonesia is doing better in education? So again, I'm thinking of analytics, and would it just be contact with the students? Now we have people studying who weren't studying before? Or would you try and measure the quality of their...
That's right, the quality also, because there's a big gap. Well, we look from the Java first. From a big city like Jakarta, small city, there is a gap. And then can you imagine from outside Java, in the eastern part of Java, so there's eastern part of Indonesia, so the gap is just so wide. So if we can narrow it down the gap, and at one point become the same level,
would be a tremendous accomplishment.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's interesting because now the conversation in some sense is moving from online and online education to righting a serious inequity in Indonesia. The difference in educational opportunity and all of the employment possibilities that stem from that, and using online education might actually solve
the problems.
an immense problem.
Yeah, some of the problem. Yeah.
Oh.
And then in a certain time. Yeah. Otherwise, say like before the technology can take probably like 20 years, but now hopefully we can do it in less than 5 years.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Or probably too optimistic. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to start and see how it works.
Someone has to start it.
I do think one of the advantages of the online world is that it scales well. So that if you build material and there's lots of interest in it, it can scale to a much larger audience very cost efficiently over building new roads and new schools. So when I was last in Indonesia, it was very clear that human connection is very important. Social structure is very important in Indonesia. One of the concerns people express about e-learning is that that human connection is lost. Do you have any thoughts on, especially in an Indonesian context, about how we can keep the human connection?
Well, I thought about it also. I think what we can do is we do it hybrid. So they still can go to, for example, like for the Prasetiya Mulya, the student can still go to class, but they do most of their work online. So we have to start gradually, like in a hybrid. We cannot just like, okay, everything is online. If you have a question, just send me email or you know, some kind of through that technology. Probably we just have to do it gradually. See, because still also human connection is very important, right?
So how do you see keeping that human connection? So one possibility was the blended hybrid learning. Yeah. Do you see anything else? Any other ways?
Well, or probably just a hybrid, if not like in a classroom in a regular basis, probably just say like for example, to reach mass in the outside Java, probably meet twice a month, something like that, or once or twice a month. So at least still have the human connection.
So I could be a student up in the Moluccas, and I'm doing my mathematics.
That's right.
And perhaps chatting using some form of text messaging.
That's right.
But every month or every couple of weeks, someone comes to visit.
That's right.
And we have a learning circle.
That's
All of the people studying mathematics can come and talk to the faculty member. And so even though most of that activity is both digital and at a distance,
that's right,
we now associate a human face
that's right,
with the course.
Well, at least they get to know me, because otherwise they will see me just on screen. But now if we can meet only, say like once a month, I think that's good enough, or twice a month probably is better.
Okay, so because I used to be an associate dean and I deal with lots of pragmatic things and travel things, so I'm going to ask, how realistic is it for you, the instructor, to travel to Manado and the Moluccas and Bali, or is it perhaps better to have local specialists?
That's right. Or kind of a liaison.
Liaison?
Yeah, liaison. Have like just like you said, local specialists, and then we train them probably, and then or some kind of have a hub, right? And then say like once a month or twice a year we just get together, you know, to discuss about the new stuff, and then how to improve things, and then they go back to their region, so they are like the go-to person
in that region.
Go-to person, yeah.
How about text messaging? So when I was in Indonesia, it seemed that everybody messages, but I'm thinking of a question and answer platform. So I'm offering a course, maybe calculus, and students are from all over Indonesia. So we're following your plan of making it broadly available to all of Indonesia. Do you think there's much interest in students asking their questions online and getting an answer online?
I believe, I believe so, but not through text messaging, because for math it's kind of difficult.
So to give an example of what we have done at Waterloo, so I have taught a course in algebra, our first year algebra course, about 1,600 students.
1,000, that's for all high schoolers?
No, actually, that's just
College?
no, that's just the admitted class at Waterloo.
Okay.
It's very big, and we use a question and answer service that understands mathematics called Piazza. And last year, in the fall offering, so in a period of about 3 months of classes, students viewed 4 million threads on that question and answer platform. And there is no way we can deal with 4 million visits to our offices. The other thing that was astonishing to us was the response time. So when I think of a student in a class, they ask a question, and we can give them an answer in the class if we have enough time, because too often, at least in Canadian classrooms, often we have this curriculum to cover and we have to fly through it and we can't answer all the questions we'd like. Or I can send an email to a teaching assistant or the instructor, and that could take a day or two to respond. On Piazza, students respond to other students. The average response time over the tens of thousands of questions that were asked was about 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
So students naturally, in some sense, took over their own learning and answered other people's questions. There's no way that we as faculty could answer hundreds, let alone thousands of questions in 6 minutes or 15 minutes or 60 minutes. So I'm just wondering if culturally, by culturally I mean in the education culture of Indonesia, that sort of service would work.
I believe so, because when they see the benefit of it, and then they will do it also. Because if you notice also, probably Indonesian students are a little bit timid. You know,
they're very polite.
Yeah,
very polite.
They don't speak up in class, right? There's kind of I think an Asian culture. In class, they don't answer questions, and then they don't wanna give the answer. So I think with this online platform, probably it will just trigger their like a, how to say it, like
their willingness to ask and answer.
Willingness to ask and answer.
So because I think you're saying is Asian cultures are generally considered respectful.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't challenge a faculty member by
That's
asking a
right.
question, and it might not seem to be polite to do so. But with the
online, because
the digital expectations of those younger people, they're accustomed to texting. With some anonymity, they would be willing to ask and maybe answer online.
That's right. And then probably one of the feature also that I think is gonna be good, if we can do like virtual office hours, like set a time
and
virtually.
And so anybody can pop up in your screen and ask?
Probably just do it like for like 30 minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time.
I would be very interested in the data if you did that, because we actually tried that in some of
virtual office hours.
Right. And they were a flop. But I don't know if they didn't succeed because we didn't have good technology. This was 5 years ago, and in 5 years technology moves a lot. So I don't know whether it was because it was good technology or because Piazza did the same thing, but did it at a time that they were interested in. I do not keep the same office hour. I do not keep the same hours as my students do. And if my office hour is from 10 to 11 in the morning, some of my students might not want to ask their questions until 2 o'clock the next morning. And I'm not going to be answering at 2 o'clock in the morning, but some of their friends. So you have very ambitious plans for
I don't know if that's
Prasetiya Mulya and Indonesia.
Yeah.
What resources do you need to make those plans come to reality?
Well, probably first of all the infrastructure, the internet connection, and then also the bandwidth. Probably I'm not sure it's gonna take a lot of bandwidth for online learning if we have a lot of videos, and then live streaming something like that. So probably we have to look into it first, into those problems like the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, and then also But that's I think the most important thing.
So, getting infrastructure that has getting internet infrastructure.
That's right.
That has the capacity to
Yeah.
satisfy the bandwidth.
Yeah.
So in Canada, Netflix dominates bandwidth in the evenings.
YouTube also probably.
So perhaps between YouTube and Netflix, that's a large fraction of our bandwidth. I do wonder if video, in fact, is not the way to go. That some other form of exposition, videos bandwidth heavy, it's hard to edit.
That's right.
And I think maintainability over time is an issue, and maybe I'm overstating the case for video, but if I have to fix a mathematical problem or a typo, that can be time consuming. I do wonder about other technologies, an HTML5 technology, for example, instead.
Or probably just like write it down on the paper and then scan it.
Oh, okay. So it's interesting. So when I think of production value, there's a huge range. We have things where systems where people write it down on .cam or any sort of panel, and that's the video that people see, to equivalent to textbook quality production values. Do you have any sort of preference as to one over the other?
Preference for
a relatively cheap and fast way to do things, or something that
fancy
is perhaps more professional looking, more formal?
Well, it can be like cheap and formal, professional looking, that's good. But I think at the beginning, we just like fast and cheap first, you know. But I believe with the new technology, just like the online learning, I think the students can find all the answers there. Like the assignment, say like in the Mobius, if say like we can set up like design the course in such a way, so the student can do it on their own, and then have like step by step how to do it, because that's I believe one of the benefit, the advantage of online learning, because the student can go back and then redo it, revise it
as they need to, when they want to.
Yeah, but in class,
it's hard to tell the instructor to rewind and do it again.
And then also like in the old-fashioned way, the professor busy writing on the board, and then the student busy writing on their paper, and then so when the professor asks any questions, so but they're still busy, you know.
Writing. Oh. Okay, so thinking of technology, my last questions would be about what would you want to see in a new technology? What would be the most important features for you delivering STEM education online in Indonesia?
I think easy to use.
Now, by easy to use, there's lots of users. There's the author who creates the content.
So
there's a student who views the content, answers questions. There's an administrator who has to manage the thousands of students and the tech support.
Well, because right now it's big thing also the term like user experience, right? Because that's part of like I think like software development, something like that. So if on the design also we implement like user experience in such a way, shorten the learning curve, and then I believe it's gonna be a big hit. You know?
So when I think of the possibilities for Indonesia, you're thinking there's a huge audience.
That's right.
Where STEM means more employment for those students, more human resource capacity, better human capital in the country of Indonesia.
Well, part of it also because if you remember, in Southeast Asia now they have like a free trade agreement among Southeast Asia countries. So from Indonesia is freely to work in Singapore, in Malaysia, and vice versa. So that's become like open competition. You know? So we have to prepare students, you know, so they can compete. You know? Otherwise, we'll be behind.
Very difficult.
That's right.
And you're thinking that there is commitment from your university and from the government to online learning, and that technology is actually moving reasonably well to provide that.
Yeah.
So
to speed up the whole thing, and then to just like what we discussed earlier, just to reach out from people from outside Java. So it's not really central, everything in Java, you know. But we can just like spread out, the education to like a eastern part of Indonesia also.
So the future of STEM online in Indonesia is very bright.
Very, very bright.
Well, many thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.